I was planning to record SNL 50 and watch the NBA All-Star game. But the best thing about that game was Raphael Sadiq and his band. And I kept looking over the SNL, so I just decided to watch the SNL most of the time. Man, that SNL 50 was actually really good. It really was. So the show began where you had Sabrina Carpenter and Paul Simon. Sabrina Carpenter's like 5'1". And I know Paul Simons was short, but man, they were like the same size. I love Sabrina. I think inevitably Sabrina will probably host and be a musical guest one day, probably maybe this season, because she's good at this stuff. She's a fun gal. Paul was okay. Like Paul has a long-standing relationship with SNL and Lauren Michaels, so I understood why he started the show. It's just that vocally, because I think Paul's like 83, it just wasn't that great. In contrast, at the end of the show was Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is 82 years old. He has so much energy. You know what I did today? I took a nap. This dude, Paul McCartney, is touring. He got a wife that's like 20 some odd years younger than him. It's like Paul McCartney has so much energy, man. And some dudes are, well, you know, he's been doing this since he was 18. Yeah, still. That old guy has so much, and I gotta find out what his secret. Because shout out to Paul McCartney. Jack Nicholson was in the audience. Jack is like 87. Jack was in the audience. He introduced Adam Sandler. Jack said he was retiring from film, and we haven't seen Jack in a film since 2010. I miss Jack, but man, he looks good for a dude that's 87. Another older person that was there was Meryl Streep. Meryl is 75, kick-ass 75. And she did the UFO sketch with Kate McKinnon, the great Kate McKinnon. So the UFO sketches is wild anyway with Kate McKinnon, and it was crazy. So Kate was Kate because Pedro Pascal was in that sketch. And then all of a sudden, Meryl Streep walks in as Kate's mom. She was fantastic. And it's funny because Meryl's never hosted SNL. You would think in her illustrious career that Meryl Streep would have hosted SNL at least one time. She hasn't. Man, she was excellent as Kate's mom. She was just as disgusting or even worse than Kate. And when they came off the set, they were hugging each other. And I hope that Meryl will host SNL at least once. I hope her rumored boyfriend, Martin Short, because they're together at the SNL music event on that Saturday night, I hope he convinces her to do it, because Meryl Streep would be fantastic. Speaking of which, so Martin Short was there. So Steve Harton did the opening monologue. And then so he does a lot of stuff with Martin Short. So it was Steve, and then Martin comes out and it's like, hey, like, what's going on? You didn't tell me about this? And then they bantered, and then Steve called ICE to take away Martin Short. He said, I'll give you names. Given the fact that Martin Short's from Canada. So shout out to Martin Short. So that was good. And then we get to Eddie Murphy. I love Eddie Murphy. So Eddie Murphy Part 1, he does Black Jeopardy with Kenan Thompson, Leslie Jones, and Tracy Morgan. So I've always seen Eddie do a Tracy Morgan impersonation. I've seen him do that on Jimmy Kimmel. But the fact that he was doing Tracy Morgan in front of Tracy Morgan was fantastic. Fantastic, man. Because I don't think a lot of people knew he could do Tracy Morgan. It was great. So then the sketch was going smoothly, and then Tom Hanks came in. So Tom Hanks, when they done Black Jeopardy before, Tom Hanks played this like redneck that's on the show, and usually it worked, but I don't think the writing worked this time. It kind of ended kind of clunky, and I don't think I would have used Tom in that sketch. I would have used Jay Farrell. If you had Eddie Murphy doing Tracy Morgan, it would have been fantastic if Jay Farrell was doing Eddie Murphy. That would have been fantastic. And or have Jay Farrell do Cat Williams doing Eddie Murphy in front of Eddie Murphy, in front of Tracy Morgan. Oh, that was the Tracy Morgan impersonation was great alone, but that sketch would have been iconic if you had Jay Farrell there. Shout out to Jay Farrell. I always felt like SNL did not use him the way that they should have, because his talent was just immense. And I saw Dean Edwards. Dean Edwards was also a black dude years ago who did impressions. He does a killer Denzel Washington. I looked at Dean Edwards like, man, they really didn't use Dean Edwards the way they should have, just like they didn't really use Jay Farrell. Later in the show, you see Garrett Morris. Garrett Morris was in a chair. I remember when he was on Two Broke Girls. I love Two Broke Girls. But I remember when he was always on that show, he was always sitting down. And when he came to the SNL 50, he was using a walker. So, but hey, he's still here, kick-ass Garrett Morris, and he introduced the clip on the short film that John Belushi made back in the 70s, where he went to a gravesite and all his cast members was dead, but him, that he outlived everybody, which is sad because he's the first cast member for SNL to pass away first. So shout out to John Belushi, shout out to Garrett Morris. He had a bad time on SNL because he didn't know where he fit. And I think the guy who created SNL was a guy named Herbert Schlosser. And he was a proponent of black talent like Diane Carroll, Red Fox, Flip Wilson. He got them all shows on NBC. And I think when he gave the keys to Lorne Michaels, say, hey, this is the idea I have for the show. He probably knows that Lorne Michaels didn't have any black talent. And he probably said, hey, you need a black person on here. So instead of Lorne Michaels finding a comedian, he found Garrett Morris, who was a trained actor. And Garrett it was hard for him to find his footing. But shout out to Garrett Morris for being an iconic person, because it was tough for him back then. But I think Lorne did that on purpose. Anywho, so back to the show. So then we have the Domingo. We're still going over the Domingo. It's almost like Trapped in the Closet with so many chapters. So we had Domingo came back. This time Sabrina Carpenter was in it. And it was cool in the beginning. But then Domingo comes out. And then Pedro Pascal comes out as Domingo's brother. So then Sabrina Carpenter and Pedro Pascal did a version of Espresso. I love Espresso. I love Sabrina. I love that song. I got to that song late. I love that instrumental. It's fantastic. Pedro Pascal is one of those actors that he's really good as a dramatic actor. Fantastic. But he has a strong comedy sense about him. He just fit expertly in that Domingo sketch. And hopefully down the road, Pedro Pascal will be a future 5-timer. Because he has that type of talent. He's fantastic in that. Miley Cyrus and Brittany Howard did a version of Princess Nothing Compares to You. Most people know the Sinead O'Connor version. Miley was good. Like, I like Miley. She can sing. Like, I like Miley. But Brittany Howard, she's the one that made that performance. Like, Miley, because the media would say, like, oh, and Miley Cyrus did Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor. And they totally skip over Brittany Howard. Brittany was fantastic. She had a guitar. It was fantastic. But nothing is better than the original version by The Family that Prince did for The Family, which was St. Paul and Susanna Melvin, Wendy Melvin's sister. That version, the original version that Prince did for them, is the best version of Nothing Compares to You. I will always stand by that. So then you're watching. Ryan Reynolds pops up because Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, who looks great, they were talking to different people in the audience, and they asked Ryan Reynolds, like, what's going on? And Ryan Reynolds is like, what have you heard? Because he got this whole case with his wife, Blake Lively, and Justin Baldini. And if you're Blake and Ryan, I think you guys should settle that case because you don't want to go to trial. But I want the trial to happen because I want Johnny Depp and Amber Heard 2.0 for them going to trial, but they should better settle with that dude because they don't want all their secrets out. So then we get to near the end of the show, because we see Eddie Murphy is in the audience, is sitting there having a good time. And so they does this Scared Straight sketch that Kenan Thompson does. And Eddie Murphy's with him. And it was going fine. It was humorous. And then out of nowhere, Will Ferrell comes in this outfit. And I don't know if this is like short shorts or he made it that way. It was almost like a woman's outfit. He has a belt on. His name was like Big Red or something like that. He said, I get so much sex now in prison. I miss Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell will always be that dude who will always take some type of chance. No one is like, they haven't had a dude like Will Ferrell in a sense who's just willing to take that chance. And you're watching this sketch, and the first thing that comes to mind is, I need Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell to do a Netflix movie together. I don't care what it is. They got to do it. And again, you almost feel like maybe they shouldn't do it because the expectations are so big. Oh my, Eddie Murphy, Will Ferrell in their first movie together. The expectations are so big. You don't want to be disappointed. So if this is all we get is this scared straight sketch with Will Ferrell and Eddie Murphy, I'm good. I'm good. It's so funny. So if you watch SNL 50, what was your favorite part of the show? Because I'm still amazed they could do all that stuff with the sets. One stage, they did just changed the sets and all that stuff on one stage is still amazing. Because John Mulaney did his musical again. I'm just amazed by SNL's, the way they put that thing together. So if you watched SNL 50, what is your favorite part? This outfit is just crazy. Eddie's hair is crazy enough, but Will Ferrell's crazy.